Hello, hello.
Hello, Mike Quinn. Is that you?
It is Mike. Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, it's lovely to talk to you. My name's Nick Gunning. I'm the library director at
Nick,
the
yeah.
David A. Howe.
Fantastic. Thank you. Good. Well, that worked. You
Yeah.
found me.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yes, it
That
worked
is
just fine.
awesome. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to do the programming you did today. I know, especially in times like this where everybody's trapped at home and looking for something interesting and unique, your story certainly
Yeah.
fills that need. So thank you very much for doing
Good.
that.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah. No, my pleasure. Absolutely. Yeah. If there's anything I can do that can help someone or entertain them or give them an idea about something, then I'm more than happy to do that. Yeah.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. Um, So I have some questions for you here, and it's probably going to be some repeats from the conversation you just had
Oh,
with
no problem.
Kate and the
Yeah,
others.
that's all
Okay.
right.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just dive right in. Mike Quinn, thanks so much for joining us here on the All the Book Show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Boy, I'll tell you what. Looking at your filmography and the things that you've worked on, it's like everything that I've loved about childhood and adulthood. It seems like you've had a little tendril in there at some point. So it's fascinating to look at the career you've had.
It is a bit weird because, yeah, I mean, most of my earlier career was all sort of UK based,
Sure.
but that's because I think it was they had better tax breaks so they could make, Star Wars and Roger Rabbit and
Oh,
Little
sure.
Shop of Horrors and all kinds of things like that. Dark
Yeah.
Crystal Labyrinth. In the UK, it was just a bit cheaper at that time, you
Sure.
know. And then it wasn't, and then it was again. So,
Yeah.
it's Harry Potter's and the new Star Wars films
Yeah,
and
certainly.
things like that.
You can sort of follow the money, it seems like, when you're looking,
I think that's true. So I mean, that was really fortuitous for me,
Sure.
And then I went to the States in '97 to animate there to expand my sort of horizons and knowledge and different ways of bringing something to life. So I became a character animator. But
Okay.
so yeah, I've kind of gone from the sort of analog film physical world
Yeah.
into the all digital realm, and then it's kind of come back a bit from that back to practical puppets, animatronics, and shooting on film again,
Yeah.
which we never thought we'd see again.
Sure.
And now we were sort of getting a nice, really sort of blend of the two, I suppose.
Yeah.
Where it all comes together quite nicely now. So yeah, next month will be my 40th year of being a puppeteer in
amazing.
the industry, which is insane because I'm only 35 now, so I don't quite know how.
Of course, yeah. I don't.
Of course.
Who knows? Happens to the best of us, I guess. Well, when I look at it and I see the different things you've done, it just seems like any one of those areas you've worked in, whether it's puppeteering or animation, like you're saying, any of those, just one, I feel like would be just a fascinating career to have, and someone would be really fortunate to do that. But you've done it in so many different forms. It's really interesting to see that.
Yeah, that's true, though, actually. Yeah, I mean, sort of initially, of course, starting with actual Muppets, being a Muppet performer under Jim and assisting them and doubling up for their characters and things like that. But then it kind of quickly moved into animatronics and creatures for the Dark Crystal and then Return of the Jedi. And then, of course, into animation. So, but we've sort of gone from, or stylistically from sort of living cartoons, which is what Muppets kind of are in a way, to real life creatures in the real world that you have to believe are completely, real. Like the Star Wars characters and things like that, and then facilitating in effects kind of things like in Roger Rabbit and Little Shop of Horrors as well. I guess is another example that when we were filming Little Shop of Horrors, there were like dozens and dozens of puppeteers all underneath this giant plant,
Sure, yeah.
pulling all these cables and sweating away and building up big giant shoulders and neck muscles, for months on end working this thing. We knew CG was on the horizon, thinking, when are they going to invent
Seriously.
CG? Because this will all be done with CG and we won't have to suffer anymore.
I know.
But of course, in reality, it just wouldn't have been the same if it was, the fact that it really is there in camera on set.
Yeah.
Casting shadows, and when the mouth closes, it pushes air out onto Rick Moranis, and you can see his hair move from it and things like that. You just cannot get that with
sure.
CG in the same way.
Oh, that's definitely true. But, to hear you talk
yeah.
about all that goes into those, big practical puppets, it's. I mean, I'm exhausted just hearing you talk about it. So, I mean, do you need to have like the forearms of Popeye to make that work? Like, what does it take, upper body strength, to get that
Usually
going?
not.
Okay.
That's an interesting question, actually. I mean, I'm not fit by any means. I mean, usually, we'll go. There might be a few months where you sort of recover and hide away and do nothing. So you become very unfit and unhealthy.
Sure.
And then suddenly the next day you have to be running what the equivalent of a marathon in the puppet world. Suddenly, you're doing 12-hour days with heavy, what characters sometimes on hot sets, running around, being in really awkward positions, for example. And so you sort of have to go from 0 to 100 overnight, which is not the best thing. So then, often afterwards, there's a little bit of pain and recovery involved in joints and muscles. But the thing is, you can't really train for something like that because every job that I do requires a different set of muscles. And, I didn't know I had a muscle there before. Ow, 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 some weird side stomach muscle that you've never needed in the last, 40 odd years or something. Suddenly it's like, okay, I need that one now for this particular puppet in this particular position, So, you need different things for different jobs. So your best friend is technique, basically. Because if you think of it like learning to walk, right? I mean, you don't have to be super, super strong to walk down the street, Yeah. They just need to be, your leg muscles just need to be good enough to work and stop you from falling over, basically, which most of the time hopefully works. But it's learned, it's muscle memory and it's technique, and you don't think about it anymore. When you're walking down the street, you're looking at the time and thinking, what you need to get at the shops or whatever, or you're having a chat with your friends or whatever. You're not thinking about how to walk, the mechanics of walking, and you're not like some super strong leg person just to be able to walk. So really, puppetry is the same kind of thing. It's muscle memory, and technique, and I don't think it's any difference to playing a musical instrument in a way. Where once you've learned, once it's just in there in your brain and in your body and in your muscles, and it's in your wiring. You don't have to think about the technique any longer, but you can just think about playing that violin or that piano and performing that music and what you want to get out of it, and it just happens. Your arms just do what they need to do. So it's very much like that, in fact. So you don't really have to be that strong, and you don't have to, if you're a bit stronger, it helps. If you have stamina, it helps.
Sure.
But that's not really the secret. The secret is technique.
What I think is interesting and what I think speaks to the skill involved, going into something like this is when you watch something, whether it's the Muppet Show or the Dark Crystal or something like that.
Yeah,
you see those characters and it looks so effortless and it looks so natural. I think you sort of take for granted just how much is going on behind the scenes or below the scenes, I guess is more accurate. Or how much pain
is happening underneath, or how much sweating is going on. Or
whatever. All you're left with, you just see Kermit having a good time. You don't think about everything else.
And mostly that's true for us. I mean, when things are going well, we're also underneath having a good time too, which is a wonderful thing. But sometimes you have to navigate, the set is often scaled down. It's like sometimes they're a third scale to match the puppets,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And everything's raised up. But then you have all these boxes and cables and monitors. So if you're walking, you have to have a scene where you're walking from A to B to C within a shot. You could easily just fall over and trip or whatever. And we all have done that and fallen off boxes. Sometimes we're up on boxes and we fall off them and get all kinds of bruises. The last, I don't know if you ever saw the Portal commercials that the Muppets did for Facebook.
Yes.
But I was assisting Kermit on that.
Okay.
And we were working with a new company for that built the sets and props and things. And I was under the sofa doing like an arm rod or something for Kermit. And they hadn't nailed what we call spiking the furniture to the platforms that were raised, and so the sofa just slid right off, and it was a heavy, like, scaled down leather sofa with wood and everything, and it landed on my head, and everyone came running and stuff. And so there's things that you don't. I was fine, but luckily it was just my head.
Good thing,
I was fine.
right? You sure? Yeah, of course.
So
of course.
it wasn't my hand, thankfully. Right. So it was fine, but stuff happens, and people don't think about that, but nor should they. But then again, the upside is I have to say that stuff is rare, and mostly you're just trying to have a good time yourself, and sometimes being playful and a little bit of improvising around stuff, which is where the real life and fun can begin. Mm-hmm. And when I saw, it just reminds me of when I saw Jim Henson at his happiest, would be when he would, for example, let's say, he had I remember there was one thing we did, we were doing wraparounds for Muppet Show. It was a clip show, as they called it.
Okay,
so,
sure. Mm-hmm.
So there would just be Kermit and Fozzie in the attic going through props saying, oh, look, here's this ukulele. Remember when you did this sketch? And then they'd tell a joke or something. And then they'd cut to the shot. Yeah. So we were doing a whole bunch of those. And it was just Jerry Jewell, the writer, he would write stuff on the spot. He was the main sort of Muppet writer. And there was Jim with Kermit and Frank Oz with Fozzie Bear. And they were just goofing around in between takes and trying to come up with something funny. And they were just cracking each other up. And tears would be rolling down Jim's face with joy, with laughter, with the frog on his arm. He became a kid again.
Sure.
And what a wonderful thing that was, to witness.
Absolutely.
So that's the best. That's the best of it all, And those are the things we kind of live for, And we all become such. We do really become like family. We become lifelong friends.
Yeah.
And when you're in the trenches, literally trenches together for sometimes months on end, weeks to months on end.
Couches falling on your head or whatever.
Yeah, all kinds. And we're all supporting each other, helping each other out, and looking out for each other, and the entire time working together to create this thing. And so when something like that ends, it's really quite abrupt, and that was something I had a hard time dealing with at the beginning. Everyone went away, and it's like, so this doesn't have it go on forever. It's a hard thing to, and I've heard about this a lot with other actors too, being on, especially on films and long-running TV series and things. So it's not just me, they get withdrawal, I think,
Yeah. Well, I think that's true all the way down to just community theater or something like that. It's
definitely,
getting the post-show blues is pretty common. It's kind of part of the part of the experience, I feel like, is because you have that super closeness, and then suddenly, where is everybody?
Where is everybody? Yeah, they've all gone back to their lives, doing things with families and work and or they're in different. Sometimes in our case, certainly we're in different parts of the country. A lot of the puppeteers go back up to New York, and I'm often down in Southern California, and some others are South Coast and UK, and we all literally scatter to the four winds, So it's not like you can even just meet up for, a drink and whatever. So it's hard. It's really hard.
I'm sure. I mean, I always love it when, especially in Muppet productions, when they'll cut together a blooper reel or something. I'm thinking of the one on Muppet Christmas Carol or Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, and you get a glimpse into, just a little bit of like the camaraderie and the joking around and the riffing on what's going on, and it's just
sometimes you do see that.
It gives you
Disney don't do it as much now. They kind of did away with all the puppeteer, seeing puppeteers and behind the scenes. But before then, like you say, Muppet Christmas Carol and stuff from that era, and before then, Jim was always fine showing puppeteers underneath and inviting people onto set. And showing how the things worked, and the outtakes too sometimes show how we break each other up sometimes, and it's pretty fun, I must say.
I'm sure. Well, hey, let's go back to the beginning. I mean, how does your association with the Jim Henson Company, how does that come about? Even how do you get that opportunity?
Yeah, I sort of I kind of made it happen because I not being a puppeteer was not an option for me. It's like, this is what I have to do. I want to build puppets, and I loved Muppets. I loved the Muppet Show as a young teenager. Basically, I was still at school, so I tried to copy the moves in front of a mirror. So I was sort of self-teaching myself technique at the time and trying to emulate and copy their moves. How do they, how does Kermit move that way, and how does Piggy move that way, and Fozzie, and what are they all doing? What's going on there? So I sort of learned actual basic techniques at that time myself. Taught myself really.
Yeah.
And built a lot of puppets with pocket money, parts. Abandoned body parts and heads and things as well.
Okay. From the puppet graveyard or whatever.
Yeah, puppet graveyard, that's right. So lots of that. So, it's like I was already into the program, as it were, and it's like, I thought at that time, okay, I'll have to do, maybe some live shows or something like that, which was fine. And I was thinking about how to do that when I left, for when I did leave school. Mm-hmm. But I got to visit the set of the Muppet Show, and would visit regularly. They were literally half an hour from where I lived, which was crazy.
Okay.
So once I made my first introduction with them, I sort of kept coming back with puppets that I'd built, and I would watch all kinds of guest stars, Linda Carter, Diana Ross, Gene Kelly.
Wow.
Just one after the other. But they all got to know me there, It was like, oh, here's Mike.
Yeah, right.
And so the puppet builders in the workshop, as well as the performers, would all, I just became a regular fixture. And I was still at school at that time.
Okay.
So I sort of became a familiar part of the scenery to them, I think.
Yeah.
And then when I left school, I literally asked Jim for a job. I gave him an envelope on location, said, here you go.
Wow.
And the thing is, what I'd heard years and years later was that Jim had said to somebody, well, he's hanging around the set all the time anyway. I might as well just give him a job.
Yeah. Get a little work out of you, sure.
Yeah, right. He's here anyway. I mean, so he was funny though, because he was worried because I was so young.
Yeah.
He was worried that he was taking me away from potential college education. Which is a valid point. But for me, that there was nowhere to learn to do this stuff anywhere. They were the people. They were the college education. They were the people to go to. So it was interesting though that he was worried about that. Though, and I never really heard about any of that till recently.
Well, it speaks to his kindness, I think.
So it's a very thoughtful man. Very very. Always concerned about everyone else, much like Kermit was. Yeah. So, but it was wonderful,
Well, it sounds to me like a young Mike Quinn, homemade puppets in tow, managed to be a pretty smooth operator. Talked himself into the Jim Henson Company.
Definitely, absolutely, and it works. That stuff works.
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, put yourself in front of people and be vaguely okay at something. Don't be terrible. And don't be horrible. Be a nice. I was very quiet and shy as well, so that didn't hurt.
It sounds like it happened pretty gradually, as things just sort of progressed and you find yourself on the payroll. But I'm curious, what was the moment where you looked at yourself and thought, like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, what was that first moment of shock where you're like, I'm here. I did it. This is it.
That would be my first night on the Great Muppet Caper. They were shooting nights on location, and my first day working on Muppets. 16 years old.
Wow.
And and they were shooting. It was a Swedish chef hanging out the back of the Happiness Hotel bus.
Sure. Yeah.
That was my first puppet, my first scene, and I thought, wow, here I am working Muppets with the Muppeteers on a Muppet film.
That's crazy.
And I had no idea, it's like I didn't know how films were made. It's like, they actually take walls away and ceilings away so they can get lights and cameras in there. That's how they do it. I had no idea. I was useless. So so I was learning as I went, basically, on the how it all works, Well,
that's a pretty...
But that was the moment in time. I remember it very clearly. It's like, wow, here I am. This is it. And it was scary and it was exciting and...
Yeah, well, still, I mean, that's a pretty impressive boots on the ground kind of internship you had there on the Great. See, now now those songs, Happiness Hotel, and those songs are gonna be stuck in my head for the next 6 weeks.
Absolutely.
So thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I know. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my goodness me. Good times. Good
yeah, I'm
times.
sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a great time just watching it, so I can't imagine what it was like, behind the scenes. Now, was it your
Oh, it was,
association with the Henson Company that led you to Return of the Jedi?
I suppose indirectly. I
Okay.
mean, Jim Henson and George Lucas knew each other anyway. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
years later, of course, George Lucas was exec producer on Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they knew each other from when they had Star Wars guys on the Muppet Show
Oh,
a
sure.
few
Yep.
years earlier.
Yeah, pretty
And
classic.
plus,
Yep.
of course, Yoda in Empire
Yeah.
Strikes Back
Mm-hmm.
was a somewhat of a Henson and Lucasfilm
Yeah.
co-production in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It was some Henson people, and Frank Oz and Wendy Froud, and then Stuart Freeborn from the Lucasfilm side, the non-Muppet side, I guess, non-Henson side. So that was a collaboration, definitely. So basically, when Dark Crystal finished in '80, it was like late summer of '81. The next big film to come into the studio was Return of the Jedi
Mm-hmm.
at the very beginning of '82. Like, as soon as the January, the Christmas holiday was over, we were in there. So they were in pre-production in the fall of '81,
Okay.
and us puppeteers were the only people on the planet that were actually trained to work creatures and animatronics.
Mm-hmm.
It was a new thing. Dark Crystal was pretty much the first proper full-scale animatronic film.
Okay.
With that, animatronics had pretty well been invented at that point.
Okay.
So we were trained up and ready to go, and there was nobody else that
Right.
could really do
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah, very unique set of skills, I suppose
Yeah.
you found yourself with at that time.
So, yeah, and I guess I had a good reputation by then. So Robert Watts, the producer, just had a little chat with me late '81 at some point, saying, "Well, we want to bring you in as a puppeteer for some different things," and and we just chat. I forget what we talked about now. It wasn't much, but and that was it. And no auditions, and I didn't know what I'd be performing or
Okay.
anything. Just knew there'd be various creatures. And started the beginning of January, and just kind of went from one creature to the next as
Wow.
they came up and as they needed people and things that I fit in with well for them, I guess. So that it was very much an organic, natural. It was almost like, oh, that's what you do. You just go from one film to the next.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Nice work if you
Which
can
sort
get
of
it.
was, yeah, which sort of in a way was how it was back then, though.
Okay. So how did you go from doing individual creatures to actually like suiting up in costume?
You mean like for the Nien Nunb character?
Yeah.
You're talking about specifically Return of the Jedi still?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Well, in the Millennium Falcon cockpit with Lando, he was actually a hand puppet.
Oh, okay.
So he was like a large Muppet in a way. My
Okay.
hand was inside his mouth. He was
Sure.
worked above my head. I was laying flat on my back. They had to cut the base of the seat out of the Falcon.
Oh, okay.
And they were really nervous about doing that because it's like, well, these are 1973 race car seats. We can't get any more of those. Are you sure you want this cut out? Like, yeah, I can't get in there. I can't get low enough.
Right.
So they did that, and it was worked as a hand puppet essentially.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
initially he was a background alien. That already shot some wide shots, other
Okay.
scenes with it, and there was an extra wearing the
I
costume,
see.
but it was
Okay.
a pull on mask with no movement, no arch, and he
I
was
see.
just a background guy.
Sure.
So about halfway through the film, George Lucas knew that he needed a character to complement Lando in the Falcon there, co-pilot,
Okay.
and I guess he liked the look of that head. He wanted an alien,
Sure.
like Han had Chewie, so he wanted something different and not non-human, I guess. So he'd picked that out, and I was playing with puppets up in the Phil Tippett creature shop one evening while Phil was getting ready for the next day with the creatures and stuff. And yeah, we're about halfway through the film, I think.
Okay.
And I saw this Nien Nunb guy and just the mask,
Mm-hmm.
and he was telling me that he's got dialogue and I don't know what we're going to do. His mouth doesn't move, so we're going to have to cover it up maybe with an oxygen mask and maybe just
Yeah. Just
get
got
by
to
that
work it
way.
out. Sure.
And I thought that was not very good. I thought that's we can do better than that. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my hand inside and showed him how I could actually work the mouth. I said, if you put grips in here and put a little mouth interior in here, I can actually puppeteer the mouth.
Oh, wow, okay.
We could, pad out the head, put a little sort of foam brain in there, and I can work it as a puppet.
There you go, going back to your roots, making homemade puppets.
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was definitely a puppet maker, and I built some stuff on Dark Crystal too. Okay. So I, had actual in the field experience. So I did know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And he was like, I guess he saw that. I guess Phil Tippett saw that, and he said, you know what, that's actually a really good idea. It looks quite good. Do you want to sort of just do a little rig on that and sort of get ready, and we can maybe show it to George in a week's time? So I said, sure. So I kind of did what I thought would need to be done and built out a little shoulder chest section for the costume to sit on, and showed it to George, and we did a little film test, and showed it, how he could talk, and I said they can just put a little eye blink mechanism in the eyelids so his eyes can close and be good for like acting expressions and stuff like that. Yeah. And then I showed, he could wiggle his ears too, and George seemed to like that. Put a little cable control in there.
Okay.
So he asked, how long can you until that can be ready? And so the creature guys said about 2 weeks. So they flew the head back to from London to California to ILM and mechanized it out, and it came back 2 weeks later. With a couple of cable controls, one for the eye blinks and one for the ears, and suddenly I was performing him.
Wow. Okay.
So I somehow got myself that job, I suppose.
Was that extra exciting to you, or for you was it just the same as doing creatures?
No, it was super. No.
Okay, so really it felt like a big. Okay.
I mean, hey, this is Lando, for goodness sake.
I agree. I just wondered it from your perspective.
This is the third film of the trilogy. This is what's going to happen. This is the big finish.
Yeah.
This is the Millennium Falcon. This is Chewie's old seat. It's like, oh, no, it was like...
So you were feeling all that. Okay.
So one part of me was like, oh, my goodness, and exploding and just so excited and scared and nervous. But then, but by that time, at least, I knew enough to put on my professional hat and...
Sure.
Play it cool, and
smooth
focus
operator.
on the job, get the job done. But underneath, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I'm still like that to this day, really. I don't think we really change. I can put my work hat on and get the job done and try to deliver stuff, in the first take if possible. Oftentimes you have to do that. But underneath, I'm still like, oh, this is so much fun. This is so cool. And I do, and I miss it when it's when we're not doing it. And I often I'm the first to arrive on set and the last to leave. Okay. So that hasn't really changed from then to now either.
Now I have to assume that when Return of the Jedi wraps, you don't imagine you're going to be revisiting this character ever again.
Correct, because at one point, though, I think during that time they were still talking about doing the final 3. George had said he was going to do 9. So I didn't think that I would necessarily see him again. I thought I think at one point there was a talk of a council of Yoda type puppets, and I thought, maybe I could be one of the Yoda puppets on the council. Okay. In the final trilogy. So I was thinking along those lines, but of course, that didn't really happen as planned. And then when the prequels came up, I thought, maybe I could. I'm not too old. I can still do this. Maybe I could perform Nien Nunb in the prequels, or a younger version of him. But that wasn't to be. So it's like, sad. Yeah. and then of course when the final trilogy came up, I thought, okay, now's my chance.
Here it is.
Let me get in there. So I actually built a web page with my credentials and pictures and saying what I'd done in the past and who I am and what I could do in the future and how I could do Nien Nunb again and da-da-da. And a friend of mine knew J.J. Abrams. Okay. And so I said, could you just email him this link for me? And he said, sure, and next day it's like, done.
Wow.
So,
wow.
One has to make one's opportunity. One has to make one's own luck.
Yeah. So now was that
contacted me anyway? I'm not sure because they got hold of the Akbar, Tim Rose, and the voice guys and everything as well for Akbar. So they may have done that anyway because they wanted legacy, performers.
Sure.
But hey, I wasn't to know that. So, and who knows? So, but I think there's a lesson there somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it seems like, by being proactive and putting yourself out
Yeah.
there, you've really, been able to achieve a lot of your dreams. So now, what was the experience like working on the new trilogy versus Return of the Jedi? Because you are a little bit in there, a little bit more as far as like you are actually costumed up in this one, aren't you?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was lovely actually. I mean, now I finally had legs and I could
Right.
I
Yeah.
could stand in amongst the main cast and run around and walk around, and I did all of those things, and I fell over a lot because I couldn't see half the time.
Right.
But it was amazing to sort of be able to still to try and get some kind of continuity in the thought processes from the original puppet. But then, it's a whole different process now. It's my head and my body, and someone else is working the face via radio control. A puppeteer that I'd usually kind of coach them quite specifically. Like, now I'm going to do this, and I want you to do that. So we'd rehearse with the head off first, and I'd say, look at my face, look at what I'm doing. Okay. And then plot it all out during blocking and rehearsals before we put the heads on and start shooting. I had an earpiece in my ear so I could hear them talking. And sometimes I'd have a mic so they could hear me as well. Mm-hmm. So that helped as well. But it was, in some ways it was just the same because, we still had hundreds of extras. We still had practical ships and sets and the familiar rebel type things, costumes and weapons, and it was, and film, shooting on film. In many ways, it was really just like being back there again. But except now, it was interesting because a lot of the crew and cast and extras they'd recognize the character. And they'd like, oh, is that the guy from the Return of the Jedi? And I'd say, yeah, and they'd be all excited, Yeah. So there was that recognition. And then when I told them, well, it was actually me that was the original too, and then they'd all sort of flip out and say, You're not old enough to. It's not possible. You're too young to have done that. In that
That's
film.
Nice to hear, right?
So that was good. But I just enjoyed. I mean, we shot a lot of extra stuff that didn't make it. Sure. And I wish some of that was in there. But it was just nice to feel that I was just a part of the gang. Walking amongst them and joking around in between takes, and there were all the main cast were sweethearts, really. They were all so lovely and accepted me as one of them. It was really nice.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask you, there's been some debate about the ultimate fate of Nien Nunb. Where do you land on that?
It's interesting that, isn't it?
I mean,
it's I personally think, looking back and examining it all, I think it's ambiguous at best.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair statement.
Okay.
In the novel, he does die because that was based on the last full set of scripts and storyboards, which is what was intended to happen.
Okay.
He was going to go out. I thought, oh great, go out a hero. I'm happy with that.
Blaze of Glory.
Along with a lot of other classic characters, he's earned this, and I was actually quite excited once I had a little chat with JJ about it ahead of time and stuff. So, and I thought, okay, this is good. And there was like about a month before I think the release, there was an extra shot in the film of where you actually see the Tantive 4, the ship that which was Leia's original ship from the first Star Wars movie.
Oh wow.
That gets the Death Star plans. It's the exact same ship.
I didn't make that connection. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's the same one. So, the very first ship you see in the Star Wars movie is that one.
Wow.
So there was a shot of it failing, and I don't know what it was doing. Apparently, I didn't see this shot, but I was told about it. Mm-hmm. So you saw that it was gone. It was done with. And then at the last minute, that shot was removed.
Okay.
And traditionally, with all these Star Wars films, you always see an X-wing explode, or see, it's very clear, they're gone. They have the interior of them going, and then they cut to the outside and you see an explosion. So they do it every single time. But they didn't do it with this one. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if maybe it was just the timing of the edit that it was one beat too many and this high moment of drama, and they just thought, it's just kind of too distracting. Or people are worrying about him dying when they really need to be worrying about the bigger picture of things, So, or did they want to save the Tantive 4 for something else in the future?
Yeah.
Because we don't see it explode. In spite of what people keep telling me online, I saw him catch fire, and I saw him do this, that, and I saw it. We don't actually see that.
Yeah.
We see the moment before it, but we don't actually see that. And then we hear shortly afterwards where Poe says, "We're back online," because he was getting zapped as well, remember, and all the other guys were.
Right.
So, and then I don't know. I mean, it looks like there's something that looks a bit like the Tantive 4 landing above the trees near the end. I don't know if it is that or something else, but it looks kind of the same to me. So I don't know if that was a deliberate thing that they thought, hang on, maybe we need to future-proof this because it is Leia's ship. You know, it's the one that and the Falcon are the two sort of, and then Luke's X-Wing, I guess. Those are the three sort of key vehicles throughout all 9 films. I mean, they said they're done with that story, and they, in the future will be other things, but I don't know. So I'm really not sure. I'd like to know what specifically JJ and Kathleen Kennedy say about it. Yeah. Or maybe they're like, I don't know. It's really funny.
It is funny.
I wish it was definitive one way or the other. Yeah. I don't mind what it is, but I just wish that it wasn't ambiguous.
Imagine. I just thought it was funny to me that on the heels of that movie, it's like all these questions like what happened to him just seemed like it popped up right away, and there was so much interest in that. I like that. I thought it was kind of cool. It's fun for the character, that he's inspired such loyalty, and people like just have to know.
It's amazing, isn't it? Really, I mean, for what was just a little. He was a chorus girl when he first started out, a Broadway chorus girl, and then he got pulled to the front, and then suddenly he's in all these books and comics and games and all the toys, and although he still doesn't have a Lego figure yet, he doesn't have a which is a crime, and also
I agree.
He needs the Black Series figure, as they call them. They're the larger. He doesn't have one of those yet either. So if enough people put it out there, he did just, however, get a Hot Wheels car last month. Cool. Finally,
that's pretty good.
I used to play with those when I was a kid, so that's kind of nice.
That is cool.
So it's great, though. It's wonderful that the fans really like him. Well, I think for me, I mean, he's just very appealing visually. I mean, when I first saw him, he reminded me of Dopey from Snow White, with the big, big ears and big eyes.
I can see that.
So I thought he was quite endearing anyway, but my approach to him was always the exact opposite of what other traditional creatures in Star Wars are. A creature character tends to move in a very creature-like way, and they tend to sort of have a certain kind of a life and movement style to them and to their faces and the way they blink and the way their expressions are. And with him, he's almost the opposite of that. He's almost like a cartoon, where he's going from like pose to pose. It's like, no, I'm sad, I'm looking down, and now I'm up and I'm concerned, and now I'm here, and it's all very much, it's like cartoon stuff to me, and I always tried to think of him in that way, as going from pose to pose to pose, to try and register very clean, very clear expressions, with doing very little at all, which I suppose comes from, not only Muppets, which is that's what they do basically. A good Muppet performance is just, it's not a bunch of movement, it's less is more, and animation is very much that as well. So certainly my puppetry helped my animation, but my animation also helped my puppetry, which fed into the new especially the new Nien Nunb stuff in the costume. When you watch him, he's doing very little. He'll have a head attitude, or he'll turn in a certain way, but it'll be very specific and very clean. It won't be all noisy and just everything moving all the time. So that was a conscious decision, and it's completely the opposite of all the other character Star Wars creatures, really, in a way. And I think in a way that's part of his secret of his success, perhaps.
Well, it's just it's a clever design, and it's very engaging. I think, like you're saying, that those big expressive eyes, really do pull you in, and it makes him, when you're looking at the original trilogy, and there's so many different creatures and characters around. There's something about that character that really stands out. You know, he's very memorable.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah,
And
it's interesting.
It's hard to you know, qualify that in a way, but you know, it is what it is, and I'm very thankful that he's fun. You know, I do hope I get to perform him again at some point. I may, especially if they go back in the timeline. You know,
well, I mean, with Disney Plus and all the things happening.
Well, that's the thing, and other things. I would love that very much to be able to get back into him again. But if not, I mean, my goodness me, you know, 35 years of doing a, you know, 35-year span or more, I guess, of doing that character.
Yeah.
You know, in 4 movies and a Disney ride now as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right.
Which we did as well. So it's like, wow, you know, what a great gift that was to be given. You know, how, you know, I'll never take it for granted at all.
Well, I've got 2 more things I want to ask you about, moving outside of Star Wars for a minute. For starters, my co-host Eric is the biggest Jurassic Park fan, so he would never forgive me if I didn't ask you a little bit about your work with the Jurassic Park franchise. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, that would be amazing, actually. Yeah. Again, it sort of ties in with the Star Wars stuff, though. Okay. I mean, of course, it was directed by Joe Johnston, who by some weird coincidence, storyboarded the battle sequence in Return of the Jedi.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And he designed Boba Fett, and he designed the Millennium Falcon.
Wow!
So he directed Jurassic Park 3. So I saw him again, you know, during that time. That was kind of fun. We both went off to Java the Hutt to get coffee at ILM.
Nice.
And
I love a good pun.
Exactly. Right. Me too. So, but I went to ILM initially because, let's see, I'd left Pixar. And I spent a few months at a Wild Brain in San Francisco animating Hershey's Kisses commercials and things like that.
Oh, interesting.
And just until ILM were ready to grow up. So the idea was, you know, I knew that they were going to do a CG Yoda. And I wanted to, having doubled for Frank and knowing how the kinetics of his motion works, you know, I knew why Yoda moved the way he did, and because of the way Frank's hand was inside the head and what was going on in there. And, you know, it's like, okay, I know, you know, rather than just randomly animating Yoda, there's a logic behind this. Sure. So I wanted to be a part of the influencing that as a puppeteer. So that was my logic behind it. So, however, I got halfway through. They always put everyone through like a month or whatever of training in ILM, you know, to learn their software basically. And how you pull in match backgrounds for match moves and all their own specific software for the faces and that sort of thing. So I was in ILM training, and I got pulled out about halfway through because one of the animators for JP3 went off to work on a James Bond game or something. I guess he got a better deal somewhere, and off he went. And they were a person short. So Dan Taylor, the animation director for Jurassic Park 3, pulled me in somehow. And so I got to work on that for about 6 months. And it was fun. I actually really enjoyed doing that stuff. And I liked Dan, and we got on well together. And that was, a pleasant experience. So that's kind of how that came about. And then after that, when it finished, then I went back on to Attack of the Clones, by which time they were halfway through everything, and Yoda was already established, and nobody really wanted to hear what I had to say about it. So that was that, really. So then after when that finished, I'd been at ILM for a year, and they said, do you want to stay on and extend your contract for another, whatever it was, 6 months or a year or whatever? We can put you on Ang Lee's The Hulk.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, I couldn't think of anything worse for me personally, you know, doing digital stunts thingy. It's like, that's not acting, that's not characters to me. I thought, no. There are a lot of other people here that are also about to be let go, and they would much rather do that than me. Let them have it. So I decided to leave. So it just wasn't me. You know?
Okay, sure. So what was your main area of focus on Jurassic Park? Were there specific like dinosaurs that you were working on, or how does that all work?
Yeah, I mean, you just get assigned shots, really, like random stuff, really. There's which one was it there? was it the Allosaurus, where he pokes his head through the hole in the fence and they're running through the... Yeah, that was my shot.
Oh,
okay. And then there's at the end of the fight where the T-Rex and that one fight each other, and I think, is it the T-Rex that gets killed and lands on the ground and Sam Neill runs around him?
Okay.
That was my shot as well.
All right.
So and I was pretty well left to do what I wanted with it. You know, it's like, well, this is the background plate. The dinosaur has to land, just, you know, and have fun. So you know, you work out all the physics, and that was something I always thought I wasn't too bad at. You know, it was just the gravity and the weight and the physics of it, and how he, you know, the little bounce when it lands, and then I did a little twitch in the leg, you know, after he died, just like a little muscle spasm. You can see, and they let me keep that in there stuff. So things like that. And then we had some baby pteranodons, which when they're pecking at the kid in the nest, did some of those. And then there was a raptor that's jumping up at the tree, jumping up at the camera. That was my shot as well.
Okay. Well, that's all the heavy hitters, it sounds like.
So
it sounds like you got to work with quite a lot of things,
Yeah, some random stuff.
Great.
So there you go.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the show Kidding.
Kidding.
This is such a weird and compelling show. Like, I just didn't know what to expect when I started that show, but I was really just interested in all the things that was going on with it. And that seems like sort of an outlier with the other things that you've done. So can you talk a little bit about how that came about and what your experience on that show is like?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly not a kid's show. It's definitely an adult show.
Yep.
You know, it's adult themes and stuff. It just happens to be about a kid's TV puppet guy. Sort of Mr. Rogers, but it also taps into you know, other old American, I guess, kid puppet human shows, specifically in that whole ethos and those old values and stuff.
Okay.
But one of the writers was actually a Muppet guy. He used to work on Sesame Street as a puppeteer and then later on a writer. Joey, so that was kind of a nice little Muppet link there. But you know, it was with Muppets, you know, we're in the puppet world and the humans come into our world. With Kidding, it was the opposite. You know, we were, you know, sort of side characters. We were puppets that were having to work within their real human world.
Right.
So it was a little different for us. You know, sets were not raised up off the ground, and so we had to work very low on trolleys and crawling around, and even on location as well, same kind of thing. So it was a different, you know, it's puppets are second fiddle, definitely, but you know, not any less important, but you are having to work within their sort of sets and things. But that was, interestingly enough, here's the funny thing. You know, as you probably guessed, you know, I generally don't audition for anything. You know, every once in a while I'll do a few just because, like, I think, well, maybe I should, or I really want to do this job or whatever, and I'll go off and audition. But it's very rare, and usually when I audition, I never get the job anyway because they're looking for an American accent or something completely different, or it's already been predetermined and they're just going through the motions. You know, that does happen as well. And so you know, like, yeah, whatever. But you know, I'd designed this puppetry academy, Secrets of Puppetry, where I was sort of teaching all the things that Jim and Frank had taught me over the years and that I'd learned on my career. Okay. So that's my online puppetry course. And then one of the lessons that I wanted to add was auditioning.
Okay.
You know, because people are going to want to know, how do I audition? You know, what's it like? What advice do you have? And I thought, well, I can't really teach about auditioning if I don't go along and audition. So I thought, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet and I'll audition for this thing.
but
I'll go
primarily as research.
Yeah. It was point. Like just so I could, you know, it's not right to teach stuff without actually doing it.
Sure.
So I thought, you know, I'll use this as my sort of sample lesson, essentially. You know, not expecting to get the job. So I kind of went along and auditioned and joked around with the, you know, in fact, they had me do different readings. Michel Gondry was there in the audition as well. And I read they had 5 characters, but they just decided just to have me read for the secret share.
Okay.
So we had this whole big long monologue, and I just did what I thought it would be, with my little puppet that I brought along. And so while they were discussing amongst themselves, at the producers' table, having me try different things, I would be having a conversation with my puppet in between the auditions, and on camera. And of course I had the cameras pointed at us as well, because they knew that sometimes they might want to see puppeteers as well as the puppet.
Yeah.
So we were kind of both being auditioned, without them sort of saying
That's
it.
Interesting.
So I sort of basically started out, my puppet and I were having a bit of a debate, shall we say, about a few things. And I was telling him to be quiet, and it's not, they're trying to concentrate, and whatever. I came up with all kinds of stupid stuff, telling him to behave himself, and nobody wants to hear what he has to say. And I think that was actually what got me the job, not the actual audition itself.
Sounds like it.
So, it was kind of funny. But anyway, I got the job, and I thought, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to have to do this now. But it was wonderful, and Jim Carrey was amazing. He was so lovely, and he was very appreciative of he saw me fooling around with the puppet offset and playing around, and he kind of came up to me and said, "Oh, I saw what you were doing. That was so funny." And man,
nice.
And we got on really, really well, and we'd have little chats offset about all kinds of things in between scenes and stuff, and the set where Mr. Pickles' puppet time is built is on I think it's something like stage 26 at MGM. Excuse me, and it was voice is going now, and it was the same stage where they filmed the Scarecrow song in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh wow!
If I Only Had a Brain.
Yeah.
And usually, this is something that I always do. Whenever we're on location with Muppets or we go to different places, I always research, okay, what happened here? You know, what's the history of this place? So I'd already, figured this out. So I told Jim Carrey that, and he got really excited. He's like, oh, that's my favorite song, and I love the idea that Mr. Pickles' set is on the same stage as the Scarecrow, and he got all excited about it. So that was really nice. Yeah. And then I asked him later if he ever met Jim Henson, and he just sort of took a moment and sort of looked down and looked sad and said, "No, I never did. I wish I had." I mean, those two would have got on like a house on fire. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Jim Carrey on the Muppet Show or something. I mean, of course he wasn't. He would have been too young, but they never met each other. Isn't that a shame?
That is a shame.
Sad?
Yeah. Yeah, it's because I can picture it. I feel like I can picture Jim Carrey on the Muppet Show like nothing. Like it would. You're right. It would go perfect.
Be amazing. So but then they also should have had Robin Williams and Dick Van Dyke.
Yes.
So anyway, what do I know, right? So that's my kidding story, and I'm stuck with it.
That's funny the way that. Can you tell people where they can find your puppetry school? Is it online?
Okay, it is. Yes. It's let's see. I believe if they go to academy.secretsofpuppetry.com.
Okay.
I think that's the actual site. Academy.secretsofpuppetry.com, and from there they should probably pick the first level, which is bronze.
Okay.
And I actually have a special going on right now.
Really?
So for like 60% off.
Okay.
60% off. So it's got some good reviews and stuff, and people seem happy with it, and so it's something that I think just needed to be created before all that knowledge was forgotten and lost.
Absolutely.
So, but it starts from beginner, like how you even stand and what happens with your hand and your arm bones and just all basic stuff, and then and how you work your shoulders, and then it kind of goes into head turns and lip sync and counting and all little sort of tricks and techniques basically that sort of add up to become a Muppet performance for any film or TV stuff, really. So it's kind of all in there, and what you put in obviously is what you get out, So
Well, that sounds fascinating. Mike, you've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to both do the program for the library and then follow up here with an interview for the podcast so everybody can hear it. Thanks very much.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
It's
and
been a real
I
pleasure.
I wish everyone the best with it all out there. Okay, yeah.
All right. Same to you. So long.
Cheers. Thanks so much.